Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to another edition of The World From Here. I'm Dan Day, Chief Marketing Officer of BlockCerts Blockchain, and I am joined here by the founder of BlockCerts Blockchain, Mr. Tim Vasco. Good morning to you, Tim.
How you doing, Dan? Great to be here today.
It is great. We've got a great thing to talk about today. We've been hearing all about AI, artificial intelligence, and a lot of people have had their pants in a wad because of the concerns over AI. And I think they've got it all wrong, and we're going to talk some about that.
Well, you know, I even get a lot of this commentary, Dan, of, wow, that's scary. This is so scary. And the other day we were talking about blockchain. We were like, what makes a smart contract smart? And I'm thinking, well, you know, if people understood how blockchain can make AI actual artificial intelligence instead of artificial ignorance with authenticated intelligence, because that's what we're talking about. There's this new AI in town. It's called authenticated intelligence, and that's the Web 4.0 that we're looking for. I mean, that's it, right? So
it is, and the absence of authentication would give people pause and concern for what could happen with AI. But with authentication, if you know it's real, if you know it's coming from the real mouth of a person, etc., you're creating trust in that environment.
Well, and speaking of coming from the mouth of someone, I mean, really, is this worse? I mean, I got 258 billion reasons that say this probably isn't that bad. It's so, you know, you look at what's been happening in the world. This is the world from here, after all. And let's start out with, hey, artificial intelligence, artificial ignorance, or actual intelligence or ignorance, and what's going on. You know, this last week we saw Twitter. I don't know what's more newsworthy out there, but let's just talk about Elon and Twitter for a minute. And Twitter changed its icon, its blue icon, to the Dogecoin, the Shibu dog, for a period there. And, you know, again, what happened? Here's this coin that has no functionality behind it that goes through the roof again, right?
Right. The hype monster again.
Yeah, the hype monster is out there. So we hear about this AI hype, and then all of a sudden, boom, there's Twitter again. Hypes up the crypto. Well, guess what? That didn't solve the problem Elon is facing, that $258 billion problem, where he got sued for racketeering by the Dogecoin, for hyping up Dogecoin when people were literally throwing their hard-earned money, following his recommendation. And of course, he's in court seeking to get it thrown out and so forth. But really, I mean, this is ironic that all of this is going on, and people are so freaked out about AI and what ChatGPT is saying.
It is. Well, it's because of fake news. It's because of all the things that we're afraid of and become afraid of, because there's the lack of authentication. And I know, Tim, you're also going to talk about some of the issues Twitter has with people leaving Twitter. I mean, big companies.
Well, exactly. Like this week, or in this last 7 days, you had NPR leave Twitter first,
right?
And then you had PBS leave Twitter second. So you have these newsworthy, organizations saying, no, you can't brand us. We have worked for, decades building our identity, building our brand, and just because you decide to give us a tag, government funded, what have you, we're not going to take it. And so they both exited Twitter. So here you have this public utility of what before was pretty much people going in, and you had the big argument of bots anyway, right? So bots essentially are little AI pieces, algorithms that are popping information in there. That was the whole Twitter thing in the first place. Now you have one centralized guy making decisions that have brands exiting, and the question becomes, well, who gets to authenticate who? And who gets to authenticate the the person or the brand or the information. And is it even real in the first place? You got lawsuits out there saying, hey, it was hype, it wasn't real, it was just somebody using their personality and their influence to drive up crypto. And there you go.
It comes down to trust again. You get trust from advertisers that are probably paying too much because they don't know whether it's bots or fraud. And consumers on the same side, trust on the AI, trust all over the place.
Yeah, so it comes down to the same thing: trust, truth, and then obviously transparency, like we always say. So you're kind of going through that. Meanwhile, Dan, as we always talk about, back at the Silicon Valley farm, at the farm, you've got this stuff happening where obviously we know Silicon Valley Bank failed and a bunch of other banks, and the CEO of TechCrunch comes out with the headline over here.
With a new revelation.
Yeah, new revelation, and it says, I'm going to run the business as if I will never fundraise again. I mean, call me crazy. Call me crazy. But when I went to get my MBA, that was kind of the idea. Run a business that actually generated revenue and profit, not just that could run more hype, more pitch decks, and raise more money from the cronies, right? So that whole idea, I think we talked about crony capitalism before, kind of came crashing down there. Well, what about authenticating those business models? What about saying, hey, these are the fundamentals, and this is how we're going to use the money, right? Instead of it just kind of vanishing out the back door, Sam Bankman-Fried, saying, I mean, this all has happened because of hype and non-authenticated information. It's the way the world's been.
It is. And then also, Tim, as you know, the majority of CEOs are saying that there needs to be a change. You know, the game has changed. There's a change here.
98% of CEOs, actually, according to the research report that was reported in Yahoo, 98% of CEOs are saying, hey, we need to run a different business model. And one of those business models, now that kind of tells you, hype has killed a ton of stuff.
Right.
B, centralized decisions about your brand or your person, the people working for your company that aren't really representative of what that company is, has killed this idea of really what is advertising and marketing. And finally, you got these really powerful technologies like blockchain and AI coming in. And most CTOs and CEOs and the whole C-suite are going, we're behind the curve. We better change, right? So literally everything from marketing, advertising to fundamentals have changed. And it's not just the CEO of TechCrunch that's saying, gee, I better think about how to run my business a little different. Now that I think in the first quarter, venture funding is down almost 25%, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, if you take one big chunk out, you have one company.
I think it was Stripe raised $6.5 billion in 2023. You take that out, and all of a sudden, you got this funding is dried up. You got banks going south and belly up, and we're seeing this big concern over AI. Maybe authenticated intelligence, the new AI, can change all of that, and we can actually build AI into, which we're doing, blockchain, and you can actually run a smarter business model, guys. That's reality. And
Tim, don't you think that levels the playing field for every business?
Well, it absolutely does. And it was interesting. There was when I was looking at stuff to talk about today, I found that in 2021 there was an executive order signed by Biden for decentralizing competition, and it was an executive order to create the competition in the United States because it's a strengthening of the economy.
For sure.
So, you know, here we have an executive order out there, and it's just incongruent to think we can run centralized business models, be afraid of AI, and not use these elements of blockchain that actually do make what we run smart businesses. Businesses are run on smart contracts. So what makes a smart contract smart? Using the technology in the right way and dumping the hype. Get back to what the fundamentals are. Is your brand trustworthy? Are your actions trustworthy? Can your customers trust you? Do you protect their data? Or do you track them all over the place? You know, I mean, that's really where the world's at. And I think you said a couple weeks ago, even too big to fail. You know, when you look at some of the large tech companies, that $20 or $30 billion tech company that have ruled much of the world for good point. And you know, I believe the example I used was Salesforce.com.
You did.
So I'll just throw it out there.
Softball. I wanted you to hit it.
All of these, softball, thanks, caught it. And you've got Salesforce.com, I think market cap $26.5 billion. Massive companies have their data sitting there. Before this blew up, I watched the part of the Salesforce Dreamforce thing, and Benioff and his then CEO, or co-CEO, who left shortly after, were talking about the Genie and the Salesforce Genie that basically, that's scary. It actually
watches everything.
Watches everything about all of your customers and then seeks to sell you that information back. So, too big to fail. Think about this for a minute. Data that is sitting on a centralized company that has its own financial woes is 10%, Dan, of the size of Silicon Valley Bank.
SVB Bank.
10%.
Right.
It's Silicon Valley Bank was a $208 billion failure, and the federal government came out and rescued the depositors in that. The shareholders are out, but they rescued the depositors. Who's going to rescue your data?
Yeah.
There is no FDIC for data. There is no Federal Data Insurance Corporation.
That's why we want decentralization, is so we can control and
so
own
if
our own
you
data.
don't control your data, if you don't control your software, if you don't control your digital platform, think about that just for a minute. Just take a moment of silence to let that sink in. What's your risk, right? That's centralization versus decentralization. But we've built this big internet around hype, funding. So he who has the most money and the biggest mouth gets the cash and runs the business until now.
And controls everything.
Everything.
Right.
So, you know, that's what the game has been. And then we get full circle, because we promised to talk about it, to ChatGPT.
ChatGPT, yeah.
You know, this generative processing of artificial intelligence. And, you know, here's where it gets interesting. Tech leaders and Elon Musk, as reported in the news, has signed a letter to say, hey, stop everything. Wait a minute. Does anybody else find it a little ironic that they're saying slow down when we have all this other hype up, make decisions by the seat of your pants, do whatever the hell you want to do, and all of a sudden we're saying, wait, stop the machines.
It makes you wonder, what?
Yeah.
Why do we want that to stop?
So I think the reality, the world from here reality, in my view, is you're not going to stop it with a letter. In fact, Amazon just a day ago announced they're jumping in full tilt, and Amazon's good at this stuff. In fact, in 2011, the reason they won the logistics wars is because Bezos bought a small company, I believe it was called Kiva Robotics. And instead of expanding it into the market, took it private. That's why you get your stuff so fast from Amazon, because it was a robotics AI driven company, and those warehouses are run like machines. Literally, they are machines. Million square foot machines. That's logistics with AI and robots behind it. That's what gets you your stuff so fast.
And it's the unique selling proposition that he took private.
That he took
Very
private.
Smart.
And there's a guy who understands cash flow. he did not keep having to raise money. He understood cash flow and built a business model around it. So when we look at that, do we really think a letter from Elon and other people saying stop the AI is going to stop the AI? Of course it's not. But what we can do is we can show you how authentication can make it artificial intelligence. We can show you that we can stop artificial ignorance. And that's what we've created at BlockCerts. So you want me to show you that, Dan?
Yeah, it's good. Yeah,
let me just do it quick. I'm just going to do a really quick run through and show you that.
Awesome. Thank you.
So Dan, check this out. This is our BeyondCerts wallet. And inside this wallet, literally, you've got this secure virtual space technology that lets you do anything. And I don't even think you've seen this yet, but I'm going to go ahead and log in just with my app here. And you can't see this because it's off the screen. But once I do that, boom, I'm logged in. I didn't have to type a thing. So I've now got two-factor authentication. It hits this with my app, and now I'm inside my screen. I'm going to go ahead and jump into a wallet here. And as you can see, I've got this vault wallet, okay? So let me go ahead and open that. I'm going to switch to one of my live instances here. Okay, so I'm going to switch to this instance. I'm going to check my wallet because I've got all these different instances that now know this is me authenticated, and I'm going to open my wallet. Now you see this right here. This is all of my TIM authenticated transactions happening right here. I'm just going to pick this top one that I did a little earlier this morning. So you can see that, and I'm going to click that, open up my browser. Now this tells me, and we've got our own Orbit Eye browser. So again, secure browsing on this. Now let me move that out of the way and show you what's happening behind the scenes. Okay, so I'm going to do this, and behind the scenes, what we're going to do is this transaction, this actual transaction, I'm going to search for it and show you what that transaction looks like. So anybody can do this, and it's live right now. So we just paste this right here. I'm going to grab that transaction ID, copy it, and paste it right here. I'm going to search that. And there's the transaction. Now let me show you something really powerful about that. That's actually a transaction that I did, and you know it's from me. When we use AI to do this, the only thing that the AI engine needs to do is follow this link and say, well, you know, that was came from an authenticated address. I maybe know it's Tim, maybe I don't. You can't tell that this is Tim from that information, but you can go to BlockCerts Find Me, and you can find what that information was and know it's from somebody or something that was providing that authentication. So let's go ahead and open that in a new tab and see what that looks like. Okay? All right. And that tab is opening behind the scenes here. So let's just have a look at that and see what's happening. And oh, there it is. I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that. And that is the human readable form that allowed me to go into my instance here, which is all running on the blockchain, and find exactly what happened at that moment. So here's what's interesting about all of that, Dan. This just showed you how AI can prove that it's Tim and give only me access to that, or people who I've allowed to have access to that by logging in. So
right. Through a private key, through the access
through the private key, and you
through.
saw that I had already logged in with my two-factor authentication through that authenticated wallet and the authenticated QR code, the things that we just showed. Okay, so there is your transaction, and this is how we did it with domain certain, where we say the web is under new management U. All I did was bought my domain here. It's linked to my private key. I created my vault, and now anything I do is authenticated. And if I want the AI engine to be able to search that and find it, I can. I can see what information AI is picking up from the general web, and as an intelligent person, I can question, does that actually have validity? Is it authenticated? Who or what private key, public key actually did it? And if they want to unlock their identity, they can.
And that shows what's possible with blockchain with just a few 3 million development hours, right?
Just a few 3 million development hours and a little more than a decade. That shows you. You know, it's interesting, Dan. I was thinking the other day, the first time I actually started working on blockchain, it's scary, was 10 years ago this year. 10 years ago. We're going to have a celebration. It was July. Sure. I'll never forget it. It was July 2013.
Unbelievable. Wow.
Yeah.
But, you know, that just goes to show what's available today. And you, to circle back around, you know, authentication intelligence versus what you always say, which is
authentication intelligence instead of artificial ignorance, because what people are afraid of is artificial ignorance. I think we should be afraid of all ignorance and all hype. I mean, look at what it's done. Look at the people that have been hurt by it, right? Yeah. And if you've ever lived through it, and if you've ever lived through these frauds, we've lived through them, Dan. You were at MCI, WorldCom. Right. You know what that did to your life. I know what Finova Capital during the Enron days did to my life. You know, of course, it was worth it for me for 10 years to say, let's build some artificial or authenticated intelligence out there for this artificial intelligence world we're headed into. And let's get people behind this. I mean,
yeah, for sure.
You know,
and what you just showed was taking that that private key, taking the two-factor authentication, everything, that how private and secure that is, and then to show that in non-human readable form, and then executing that because of authenticated transactions, authenticated TIM, into something you can see.
Exactly.
So, and phenomenal.
And it was never about, and this is the big thing, blockchain was never about crypto. Crypto was a cash grab, right? And the idea was an internet that was open, that was authenticated, that improved lives, not made it scary to be out there, not scary from artificial intelligence, not scary from cybersecurity, which we're going to talk more about, not scary from fraudulent contracts that are just e-signed PDFs to actual smart contracts that interact with people. That's where we're at in the world. And we just showed you right there, it's possible for anybody, as you said earlier, Dan, anybody to get on board. Go to domaincertain.com, $10. We didn't raise the price of any domains. Go get one.
No. So the best domains aren't $1,000.
No.
They're $10.
We'll talk a little bit about the price gouging hype now of blockchain domains. It's out there, valued at $10,000. I saw it in an email today. I'm like, oh my goodness, here we go again. Haven't we? 258 billion reasons why not to hype stuff, guys.
Exactly. So, Tim, I know we've got to wrap this up. If you haven't already, please subscribe, give us the thumbs up, and then take us into the next
and
one.
We're going to talk more about this in depth on our podcast. We just published another one, I think, out there.
Yes, we just did.
Trustonomics. So look for us on Spotify, on iTunes, your favorite podcasting service. It's Trustonomics, Tim Vasco. I talk about the depth behind this. I think our first one was game theory. And so, if you like this content, there's a lot more of it out there. We're trying to get this idea of what Web 4.0 and authentication is to the world because it's your web. And
it is.
Dan, here it comes. The web is under new management. It's you.
Exactly.
So, like us, subscribe to us, and go get control of your web, your AI, and the world from here.
Perfect. Thanks, everybody.
Have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you.